Daddy. This is the man of the champions, Bill Fonzo, giving a shout out to
Something Else.
Something Else, Daddy.
This is Nicole Matata, Great Warrior Wolf, and you are listening to Something Else.
I'm Tony Cini, and you're listening to Something Else.
Hey everybody, it's Rich Palladino, the voice of New England, and you are listening to Something Else with Arya.
And welcome to another fine, fabulous, fantastic episode of Something Else. My name is Arya, and since this is Wednesday, it is Total Nonstop Action. So I am joined by the T.O. to my puppet. It's Cyndi. Cyndi, how you doing today?
I like to start off today's show with an apology.
Uh-oh.
John Laurinaitis, you are not the worst authority figure of all time.
People power.
Stephanie McMahon, you are not the worst authority figure of all time.
It was best for business.
Dixie Carter, we'll just leave it at that.
You can't even give Dixie a compliment.
Thanks for the hundreds of millions of dollars you sunk into this company.
There you go. Thank you for spending your dad's money. And spending a lot of it. So yeah, we got TNA. It is episode number 9. We've already reached August 14th, 2002. Now, Cyndi, have you returned from your vacation yet, or are you still on the road somewhere?
I flew home on Monday.
This past Monday, the 12th?
Yep. Got some good rest, was back at work. Ready to do the business, and had a wonderful time. Saw 5 baseball games, saw a Canadian Football League game. Went to a lot of local video game stores, made some nice purchases, and good to go.
That's amazing. Who won the games?
The teams that won the games that I attended are insert team A here, insert team B here, insert team C here, insert team D here, insert team E here, and nobody because it was a CFL game.
Well, I've always been a huge fan of the Denver Broncos. Yeah, ever since I was a child, I was always a big fan of the Denver Broncos. Sorry, I had to do a Simpsons reference there.
Well,
all right.
I always like the Atlanta Falcons.
Do you think that they can beat the Denver Broncos?
No, they suck. They traded Brett Favre.
Well, to be fair, it's fucking Brett Favre as a rookie, and who the hell knew he was going to turn into a Hall of Fame level quarterback? It's like, can you really fault people for making, bad draft picks or bad trades like that? Like motherfucker, Tom Brady went to the 6th round. And, how many GMs should have been fired, after that?
Well, the thing is, the Seahawks gave up 2 first-round picks for Jamal Adams, and he was a bust.
I mean, how much did Mike Ditka give up for Ricky Williams? Like, that was insane.
I will say that it was very nice fleecing the Denver Broncos for all that draft capital by giving them Russell Wilson.
Every team's got a draft story. So, we're talking about TNA, episode number 9, August 14th, 2002, from the Nashville Fairgrounds Arena in Nashville, Tennessee. Before we get into this week's show, let's talk about what Jerry Jarrett reported over this week in his book that he released way back when. So the big news, Sean Waltman X-Pac, 123 Kid, whatever you want to call him.
Mm-hmm.
He has agreed to come in for $2,000 per show. Now, you may not know this, but his girlfriend is Alicia, who is the madam, if you will, the woman who was spent the first 5 or 6 weeks coming out and collecting money from people. And he wants her to come back. And Alicia wanted $500 per show, but Jerry Jarrett only wanted to give her $350. So Sean Waltman said to just take $150 out of his pay and give it to her. Shit like that, you'll never understand. And then, and I'm sure this will come as a surprise to you here in August of 2002, everybody hates Vince Russo. To the point where Jerry Jarrett told Bob Ryder to not even talk to Russo. And if Bob Ryder had any creative ideas, to just bring them to Jerry directly, and Jerry will sprinkle them into meetings.
All right. I didn't know it had gotten this bad this quick.
I mean, I think it's still a lot of bad blood from the end of WCW.
Yeah.
And, here we are. So, on to the show. The first thing we see is a fan at ringside holding a sign that says, "The truth is you're my bitch." Welcome to Nashville, I guess.
I think it's supposed to read top to bottom. Because, because of how it was folded, I thought it said, "Your truth, my is bitch."
That makes a lot more sense, obviously.
I feel like the cat in that meme.
So the show opens with our new World Heavyweight Champion, Ron Killings, entering the ring. So it's not like the days of Ken Shamrock as World Champion, where he'd show up in the ring, call Goldilocks a bitch, and then we'd never see him again. Nope. The truth is here, and he announces that this building is now the TNA Asylum, which is how the arena gets its official name, so to speak. He announces that last week he became a damn legend.
That he did.
Yes. He came to TNA a very bitter man, and he wasn't sure if he'd get the opportunities he deserved. He said that an executive in the WWF told him that he could not make the same mistakes everyone else made because he was black. And then Truth said that there's still prejudice in the world, but eventually everyone is given an opportunity, and when you do, you take advantage of it. And I'm like, so is he now a babyface? Because this certainly comes across like a babyface promo. And
I would say so. By the way, I want to do a thought experiment with you.
Okay.
I'm going to count to 3, and we're each going to guess the executive that told him that.
Okay, so this is 2000. Okay.
Are you ready?
Right. Okay.
3, 2, well, I'm sorry. 1, 2, 3. Michael
Bruce
Hayes.
Pritchard. See, I just figured Bruce Pritchard. It seemed, more likely.
If it wasn't Michael Hayes, it probably was Bruce Pritchard. It was one of those two, because both of them worked the Southern Territories, so they would know.
See, I thought you were going to say Jim Ross, to be honest, because JR was the head of talent relations.
Right, and he did work Mid-South.
Let's just say it could have been anybody. I mean, if you were to tell me that, Stephanie told him this, I'd believe you too.
Yeah.
So Killings gets interrupted by his tag team partner tonight, Jeff Jarrett. You might recall that Jeff Jarrett and Ron Killings had a scumbag alliance for a few weeks. That really isn't important because everything from the first 8 weeks you can pretty much ignore, especially after this show. Jarrett says he is Killings' worst nightmare, and the only reason they are where they are is because Jarrett is white. And he continues that whole reverse discrimination thing from last week, which, again, it's just regular discrimination if you're discriminating against people due to their color, but whatever. Jarrett says he's been robbed week after week, and now he wants his world title shot. Truth lays down the belt and tells Jarrett to come get it. Now, before we go to the segment, I guess because we're in the middle of the segment, before we get to the moment, do you have anything to say about the Truth and now Jarrett?
I thought this was a really good setup.
Mm-hmm.
Because Truth was like, you know what? I'm the champ. It's all about opportunities, and there's nothing between air and opportunity to, as he said in that end of his line before the music played, knock the suds off of someone's sucker ass.
And, this is, again, I mean, Jarrett's been screwed 10 ways from sideways, storyline wise. It's like every week there's something where it's like, okay, why is he getting fucked out of a title shot now? It's like everybody and their mother is agreeing to giving Jeff Jarrett a title match, and he just never is getting one. And out comes a giant oversized cowboy hat. And underneath that giant oversized cowboy hat is Bill Behrens, who you might recall was here a few weeks ago and got his ass kicked, theoretically, by Jeff Jarrett. And now he is here because Ricky Steamboat wants too much money. I mean, Ricky Steamboat just isn't here this week. And so Bill Behrens is now in charge. And he calls himself Bad Boy Billy Behrens and proceeds to give the most nonsensical promo in pro wrestling history, causing Jarrett to begin bursting out in laughter. And think about that. Jarrett has been in wrestling since 1986. His dad has been in wrestling long before that, decades before that. Jeff Jarrett has seen a lot of crap. He grew up in the Memphis territory, home of the greenest people known to man, working for $25 a shot. Jeff Jarrett is used to bad shit on TV. And this broke him.
Right. The line that I knew things were going to go wrong is when Bill Behrens said, "Kick my ass once, shame on you. Kick my ass twice, shame on you."
Yeah, it's like, if there was ever a reason to have pre-taped scripted promos, Bill Behrens is here to show it off.
He didn't even get Jarrett's Slapnuts insult right. Slapstick, slap ass, slap nut, slap happy, lap. Okay. I know I teased this at the beginning of the show. Of all the authority figures in over the past 25 years, because we'll say the first one we all know is probably Jack Tunney, but there have been others before that, like Bill Watts was an authority figure in Mid-South, which is probably the more common one, or Jim Crockett Sr.
To be fair, he wasn't so much the authority figure. Grizzly Smith was closer to it. He was the on-screen matchmaker, and all that shit. But we get, we know what you're saying here. You have your on-screen authority figure, the theoretical, authority figure above everybody. And there had to have been a worse authority figure somewhere than Bill Behrens that we're just not remembering. But it's hard to remember.
All right. I'm rolling through all the names in my head of
like literally there was one time on Raw when Mick Foley brought out a Make-A-Wish kid to be the general manager, and that Make-A-Wish kid did a better job than Bill Behrens.
Yeah. I was about to say the same thing. Dixie at the tail end of the Spike run. It was like the Dixie train.
when she was hanging on to Hulk Hogan's leg
Yeah.
and the Hulkster had to drag her away. It's yeah. Who let him go out there in that big ass cowboy hat? Like any potential we had for this to be taken seriously, even if Bill Behrens would have cut an acceptable promo. The second he's wearing that comically oversized cowboy hat, anything he says is automatically discredited. He is a cartoon character to the nth degree, and part of why, like, people remember Jack Tunney as a great authority figure, even though he really wasn't. It's hard to be a real credible authority figure in wrestling. But part of the reason why he is fondly remembered is because he wasn't put into asinine situations like this. He was the very serious, figurehead that you brought out once a month or once every couple months to make an unpopular decision, and that was it. And it's like, how did you go from that to a cartoon? It's a hat on a hat. Wrestling is already cartoony, but in theory, that one overarching person is supposed to be the person you take seriously. Vince McMahon is a cartoon, but you were never given a reason to not take him seriously as the ultimate authority figure. If Vince on his first day as a heel came out the night after WrestleMania 14 wearing a giant oversized cowboy hat and Steve Austin still walked to the ring and stunned him, it wouldn't have had the same effect. Now, he does say that no matter what Jarrett and Truth did, it will not be sanctioned with the NWA and it won't be for the world title. So Jarrett threatened to beat the fuck out of Bill Behrens when he was randomly attacked by Brian Lawler. Okay, then.
Yeah, I had written down somehow Brian Lawler jumps Jarrett for whatever reason. And they brawl a bit and security breaks him up. I want to highlight something.
Oh, I'm sure it's going to be the same thing I'm about to highlight.
Okay.
So Jerry's Kid beat Jerry's Kid all over the ringside area, which then led to the greatest moment in TNA history as Lawler attempts to grab a chair from a fan, but the fan was not letting it go. And this fan, I don't know, like this fan maintaining kayfabe, I guess, not wanting to let this heel, the dastardly heel, get a chair to use. They would not let it go. And Lawler's having the fight of his life for the 20 longest seconds in live pay-per-view history until Don Harris runs over to basically grab the fan's hand off of the chair so the segment can continue. And as everyone's being led away, Brian screamed that he knew what Jarrett had done. Cyndi, if I were to ask you for a chair, would you give it to me or would you wrestle me for it?
Well, I like you, so I would give it to you.
Okay. What if I was a dastardly heel and trying to rip it out of your hands for 20 seconds on live TV?
You'd probably win, and I'd probably lose an arm because my right arm is screwed up. But I want to highlight, because I think I saw it a different way, that the fan won. Lawler never got the chair. Security just dragged him away.
I think by that point, everyone recognized that this segment had gone straight to hell. And there was no saving it at this point.
Yep.
So it's sad, like this segment started with such promise. Like Ron Killings cut a good promo, Jeff Jarrett cut a good promo on the Truth, and then it all went to hell.
See, it wouldn't be a problem if they would have just made Bob Armstrong the
Yes.
authority figure, because he could speak. He's done it before. He
Yes.
did it in Smoky Mountain.
Yes. Which, by the way, you can listen to on the Smoky Mountain Rewatch Along Project tomorrow. But, yeah,
Now
Bullet
you
Bob.
know why I said Bullet Bob Armstrong wanted to get a cheap plug-in for the next show.
There you go. And, I mean, plus Bullet Bob was out there. It's not like we're just throwing out Bullet Bob for the hell of it.
Nope.
But, yeah, Bullet Bob, hell, I don't know. Like, I bet Don Harris could have been a better, authority figure. He was out there.
Might want to rethink that after the show.
Remember that security? The security guard last week I said was skinnier than Tony Mamaluke. I bet he would have been a better authority figure.
Yeah.
You never know.
But who also would have made a better authority figure?
Are they going to say, who else was skinnier than Tony Mamaluke?
Don West.
Well, he was not skinnier than Tony Mamaluke, but yeah, Don West would have been a great authority figure. I was talking about Slim J.
Oh, here we go.
Who is 1/3 of one half of the teams in our opening match. It is Slim J, Kid Cash, and Shark Boy, all making their I think they're all making their TNA pay-per-view debuts. I forget if Cash has been here yet or not, but
Shark Boy I'm pretty sure has.
I don't think so, but either way, it's at worst it's their second appearance, at best it's their first, against the Spanish announced team, Amazing Red and Jose and Joel Maximo. Slim grabbed his balls on the way to the ring, and he allegedly weighs 190 pounds, but I think he weighs less than Michelle McCool at her leanest.
Just to tell everybody who Slim J was, Slim J at this time was a regular in NWA Wildside, which is Georgia, where they got a lot of their talent around this time period. A lot of the lower end guys that you'll see in TNA for the next good while have done Wildside or Anarchy or, those NWA territories in the South. The gimmick for Slim J, because it was popular at the time, was that he was a Marshall Mathers clone.
I did not pick up on that watching this.
Really?
I mean, I guess the name should have tipped me off, but it's like, I thought he did such, like, looking at it now, he did such a bad Eminem impression that I just thought he was a man who was very proud of his dick, because he was grabbing it a lot.
No, those are the hot shots.
Well, maybe Slim J could have been part of the hot shots, because he was grabbing it here.
Yeah, he was. But when we talk about the match, the term, how Dutch in later TNA, like say 2005, 2006, tell like the 3 or 4 X Division guys they would have, all right, we got 5 minutes, go video game it.
I like that 2005, 2006 is considered later TNA. I mean, it's later than this, but, yeah.
I like to think somebody told these 6 guys, hey, you got 10 minutes. We're going to hype up the crowd after that shit fest of a segment, thanks to Bill fucking Behrens.
Mm-hmm.
Pump them up. And goddamn did they pump them up.
Now, this is our weekly X Division opening match, because as we've noted, starting the show with an X Division match usually puts the crowd in a good mood, because when do crazy flips and dives not get over, at least to some degree? At one point, Joel gets backdropped over the top rope, but he's supposed to land on the ring apron and then get knocked off and into the guardrail. But instead, he slips on the ring apron and almost falls face first into the guardrail, which, would have not led to a good It would not have turned out well for young Joel Maximo had that happened. We had our giant dive sequence that you're going to see in every lightweight person match for the rest of the time. Slim J, as much as I rip on him for being a bad Eminem ripoff, he does a really nice little moonsault onto the Maximos, and then Cash does his springboard flip dive onto all 5 men. Thankfully,
you missed something about that moonsault.
Okay.
Slim J didn't get all of it because he kind of bonked his head on the edge of the ring.
I did not see that. He bonked his head on the edge of the ring?
Yeah. He didn't clear all of it.
That sucks. He was able to keep doing the match, so hopefully he wasn't hurt, or at least hurt too bad there. Now, I do want to nitpick, and there's going to be a lot of people listening to this who are like, who gives a fuck, because this happens in all wrestling these days. One of those things that I just hate, and I got to nitpick every time I see it, is when you have the dive sequence and you're diving onto your partners. Like, they're not even trying anymore to do your partners are pulling your opponents in the way, and it's a kayfabe reason why they're also there. Like, we get wrestling is fake. We get that they're just there to help catch the other guy, but at the end of the fucking day, it's hard to take anything as legitimate, serious. We're trying to win when you are openly diving on your partners. And, it still happens pretty much nonstop to this day. And just because it happens all the time doesn't mean I have to like it. And that's not to say I don't like dive sequences, that I don't like this, I don't like that. No, it's like it's really exciting and it's really fun to watch. But there has to be a way to do it that you're not jumping on your partner, at the same time. And nowadays, the only time that you don't jump on your partner is if your partner has gone around to do one of his own dives. Right. And it's like, I always hate that. And I have to nitpick and I have to point it out when it happens. I will say, as much as I'm now ripping on the dive sequence, we had what I've termed the move of the millennium, because I'm probably going to do a horrible job of describing this. But Slim J is flat on the mat. Jose Maximo hooks his legs like he's going to do a surfboard, but instead, he's just standing on Slim J's legs. Shark Boy comes in, and he gets put in a Boston Crab on top of Slim J. Joel Maximo comes in and puts a camel clutch on Jay, and then Red hits a baseball slide drop kick to Slim J. What the hell would you call that?
Welcome to the business, kid.
That's as good of a name as anything else. Welcome to the business, kid.
Yeah, because Slim J around this time had only been wrestling for about a year and a half. If cage matches be believed, and I believe him. I believe cage match because we're going to talk about that later on in the show. The finish of the match was what you expect from this type of match. Is everybody gets their stuff in, and then the Maximos attempt the Spanish Fly, hits the Spanish Fly for the 3. The SATs win in a little over 10 minutes. A very enjoyable 10 minutes.
A fun opening match, but I thought it went a little too long, at least for my own taste. And I mean, it's one of those things that, okay, if I took 3 minutes from this match, where the hell would I put 3 minutes? But I guess, the main event could have used it. But, this match would have been better 3 minutes shorter, is what I'm saying. I thought it got a little sloppy towards the end. Kid Cash was easily the best worker in the match. I thought his stuff was the crispest, and, he hit it more often than he didn't, which is also expected because at this point he's been in wrestling for at least 6 or 7 years, which I'm not saying it's more than everyone else combined, but everyone else, I think the next longest would be Shark Boy at like 3 years at this point.
Yeah.
It's like, he's easily got the experience. Hell, he was in Kid Cash. People don't remember this, but he was in ECW in 1996. Like, I don't know if he was a House of Hardcore graduate or whatever. I don't think he was, because they never really brought it up if he was, and I'm sure they would have. But it's like he was in ECW, like, not from the beginning, but, during what I consider the peak of ECW, 96, 97. By the way, I gave that match a 5 out of 10.
I gave it an 8.
And as we note, Cyndi tends to rate it more as, a fan's perspective, and I tend to rate it more on I'm a very serious wrestling journalist, as much of a serious wrestling journalist who never has gotten paid a penny to do it can.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, that's a lie, but I mean, it's enough of the truth. Anyway, backstage, Goldilocks interviewed the Dupps, and Stan told her to give him a blowjob because they defended her on the Crisco show, so she hit him in the balls with a microphone. Bo wants to start a show that's like MTV Cribs, but call it Shitters, and I imagine it on the live pay-per-view. Did Shitters get bleeped?
No, it went through.
Okay. Yeah, TNA Plus bleeped it. And with a name like Shitters and with an act like the Dupps, you'll never guess what was in the background. A porta potty that their grandmother shit in 5 years ago, and they said that someone would be shoved into it.
So that kind of highlights 3.5 points will be earned somewhere in a Dupp Cup match tonight.
Yes. And we'll get to the fucking Dupp Cup. So we go from something to something else as Miss TNA Bruce enters the ring in his evening gown from last week. I mean, hey.
I will say this before you go on, because I have it written down about that promo.
Mm-hmm.
Here's my exact words that I wrote down of that promo. Goldilocks promo with the Dupps. They talk about the show Cribs and the outhouse in the background. I tuned out. Miss TNA Bruce comes out. He says the line that made me hate this gimmick so fucking much.
How his penis makes him more woman than any woman in the world, including
Bingo.
Mike Tenay's wife.
Here's the exact wording, because I wanted to get this right. Under this dress, I am more woman than any woman in the world. My next 2 words, fuck you. So after saying that he's the most beautiful person in TNA, blah, 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 he then proceeds to do the Andy Kaufman gimmick of challenging women in the audience.
So he challenges a random fan for the Miss TNA crown and a check for $5,000. And what this says to me is we are cutting back to the point we can't even bring in one woman with an actual wrestling training to get in the ring and wrestle Bruce. So he turns down someone who's toothless, someone who has big boobs. He challenges an elderly woman, and then he ends up going to a large woman with short hair. And coincidence of coincidences here in this thing that was definitely a shoot, Jeremy Borash just happened to have a release for her to sign. How convenient. I did note that the fans were chanting, "You suck dick" at Bruce, which, I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't know what Bruce does in his bedroom, but that doesn't seem like it would be an insult to him.
No, it's just an everyday occurrence. Just, who is it with? Lenny, Squiggy, the 1991 Denver Broncos, Officer Barbrady?
I would assume Officer Barbrady, now that he's PC. So then we get Bruce versus random woman Woman starts by spearing Bruce, which, why does every non-wrestler do like the greatest spears of all time? Like David Arquette had a hell of a spear too.
Yeah, Ed Ferrara had a great spear last week. I think it's because when fans who aren't wrestlers or haven't trained to be wrestlers, when they see a spear, they kind of think of a football tackle, like a high impact football tackle. So that's what they emulate, not like Goldberg. Like, let's talk about this for a second. What's the most famous spears? Goldberg. Sorry,
Goldberg and Edge.
Yeah, Goldberg and Edge. So Goldberg, when he spears someone, it's shoulder into the stomach. He'll lift the legs up and then go down like a football tackle, like a legitimate football tackle, just a little faster. Then you have Edge, who will just go full bore, and then the person taking the spear will go down. Roman Reigns' spear is kind of the same.
Somehow I forgot about Roman Reigns doing the spear.
Yeah, it's only his finish.
Yeah. I've only seen him do it, both on TV and live like 8 million times.
Yeah.
By the way, Edge's greatest spear, or at least the spear that looked like it broke somebody in half. You remember when at One Night Stand he wrestled Beulah, where Beulah was in a 6-person tag. It was Edge, Mick Foley, and Lita versus Tommy. Yeah, he speared the fuck out of her. And Tommy Dreamer almost had no kids afterwards, even though he'd already had at least one, if not two.
I'm shocked that he was able to have kids after, I think it was Lawler who Kendo sticked him in the gonads.
Yeah, somehow he was able to have kids after that. And somehow Lawler did not get murdered by Tommy Dreamer afterwards. Because I'm telling you, you hit me even in a body part that I don't want with a kendo stick and cause them to have to take a needle to draw blood out of that body part, I will probably murder you.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, back to our riveting match, because this match just 5 stars in the Observer that week. Bruce picked up the win with his one and only move in this match, the small package. And according to Cage Match, and Christ only knows how the internet found this out, her name is Tina Hamilton. And from what I could tell from quote unquote exhaustive digging, this is her first, last, and only match. Where the hell did she come from? How did we get her name? I'm assuming she was a trainee somewhere. And
that's what I have written down too.
Yeah.
I gotta think she was from, I'm trying to think who was working for TNA or had access to TNA. I wouldn't be shocked if it was like Dory Funk Jr.'s school.
Maybe.
Because Dory Funk worked with them a lot. I know Dory Funk provided a lot of the students who, we're fast forwarding a lot in this episode, but bear with us, folks. In 2006 was No Surrender, I think. The September pay-per-view before Bound for Glory 2006.
Yep. No Surrender.
The audience had belts so they could whip Jeff Jarrett, like an audience revenge match. Belt was not on the line for this match. So that's what it reminded me of. This is someone who had their first match, after the first match, plus women's wrestling in 2002 wasn't, hate to say it, but really wasn't a thing. It really didn't become a thing until, I want to say 2005.
Honestly, WWE, it's like, WWE, it was the half-assed push. I want to say it was 2003 when it got as serious as it was ever going to get. But like '02, it's like it was when Trish was really getting better. Molly Holly became the virgin with the big ass. Victoria debuted. Jazz was there. So it's like they were starting to become something, but in my opinion, and this is just remembering my childhood being better than maybe it was. It was like 2003 was always like this, in my opinion, the start of when the WWE Women's Division wasn't just good for a woman's match; it was a good match on the show.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't until '05 when Molly retired and like the women's division just became the Diva Search Rejects and Trish. That's like, okay, this is when it's going shit.
Yeah, this was '05, and like there was what, Trish and Lita and a bunch of refuse.
Pretty much. And I mean, in the interest of fairness, like Candice Michelle became an okay wrestler, you know, and that's like the biggest compliment I can give to pretty much anybody. I guess Michelle McCool was all right, you know, but you know, but you'd also have the Mickey Jameses, the Molinas, she could go on the right day with the right opponent. Beth Phoenix would come in soon, but it's like even when you'd have all these really good women's wrestlers, or at least more than adequate women's wrestlers, it was still Kelly, Alicia Fox, fucking Layla, Ashley Massaro. And, and I'm not saying this to despite them. It's like, I'm sure they did the best that they were able to, but like there was a definite drop off once it became the Diva Search division.
Which I think the moment that the division got a lot better was, I want to say, early 2007, because that was around the time Finley became the coach of the women's division.
Oh no, Finley's coaching them now in 2002, because this was when Finley was retired. Because it was like Finley and like Lance Storm would tell the story about, Lance would get in the ring with them, before the shows too. So it was '02, '03. So it's like '07, it's like it was already Diva Search division.
Right, and there's something you can do with them, some things you can't. Like, they made use of some of them in various ways that worked, like Cherry, Ashley Massaro. They became managers. I know Ashley Massaro managed London and Kendrick. Cherry managed Deuce and Domino. I'm sure. Then you had I forget who was the woman who was in JBL's cabinet.
Amy Weber.
Amy Weber. She was part of the Diva Search as well.
Don't ask me how I remember that. It's like Amy Weber, Joy Giovanni, who was Big Show's special friend. Like, all of this, by the way, more interesting than what we're going to be talking about here.
Oh no, we're going a dark path here.
By the way, the Bruce match, 0.
I had no grade. I didn't count it as a match. I counted it as a segment.
Goldilocks interviews Jeff Jarrett backstage, who says he didn't do a damn thing to Brian Lawler. He then finds Bill Behrens taking a shit in a stall, so it's our second shit reference on the show, and shoves him down. And thankfully, even though he was taking a shit, his boxers were pulled up. So
that tells me he was finished with it.
Or he just didn't understand how to go to the bathroom.
Knowing this is Bill Behrens, it's probably true.
And then, because we can't stuff too much into one segment, Low Key randomly walks in to go to the bathroom. And so Jarrett calls him Kojak and then leaves. And then, in the same segment, as Jarrett's leaving, Bo Dupp bumps into a little person and on purpose and says that they will settle things tonight.
This is building off of what the Dupp said in week 6. Remember when they had that match against Ian Hamilton?
Yes. All you have to do is
See,
bump into somebody and you have a match.
and that's what happens here. So that's your Dupp Cup match of the night. But let's go to a dark place, unfortunately. Because match
right.
number 3 is Don Harris versus Malice.
Now,
Doesn't sound too bad. This is building off of the past few weeks. This is the last man standing match, going off of the first blood match, which
had
had a
finish
really the very screwy finish.
Now, if you, I'll admit, I watched a lot of these, years ago, and so I had some notes, so I kind of just, noted around from that. However, if you watch this through the TNA Plus app, which is how I'm watching it these days, essentially it goes from, Bo Dupp bumping into a little person to Bo Dupp coming out for his Dupp Cup match. The next 10, 12, 14 minutes are lost to time.
They cut this match from the...
Yes. Because what
Lucky
happens...
me, because I have the original pay-per-view. Yes. Here we go.
So what happens is Don Harris is wearing a shirt with an SS logo. And for those who don't know, and, not going to just assume that everyone knows everything, for those who don't know, the SS, which was basically the Nazi protection squad, as the name implies, was an organization under Hitler and the Nazi Party, which was responsible for many of the crimes the Nazis committed between 1939 and 1945, and was considered one of the most powerful organizations in the Third Reich, which is the name for Nazi Germany. So to summarize, this match was a devil worshipper versus either a Nazi sympathizer, or a complete fucking moron. Perhaps 2 out of 3. And the Nazi was the babyface. Now, I wrote down what I recall was the finish, and I'm hoping my recollection was incorrect, because this sounds just amazing. So I'm going to hand this over here to Cyndi to discuss the match and what is hopefully not the finish that I wrote down.
All right. It was essentially a punch-kick affair, a lot of weapons used, and the match ended, if I remember this right, if my notes are right, that both men were starting to get up around 8 or 9, and then Malice collapses. Don gets up. Don wins. I have here, sadly, the Nazi wins. Knowing what we know about the Harris brothers, I think number 1 and number 3 are the correct answers. Now, from the question that was posed before.
Now, I wrote that the finish was Malice giving Don a back suplex through a table, and despite that, Don beat the 10 count to his feet.
Right, because the table, because Malice took the brunt of the table, Don missed the table.
Okay, so that at least, for the sake of trying to get something that makes sense in this fucking show, that I guess will make a little bit of sense. But yeah, so Don Harris, the Nazi, he wins. And I remember this actually was a big deal at the time, and everyone pleaded innocence at the time. I mean, I don't think anyone ever asked Don Harris, but, Jerry Jarrett pleaded innocence and all this other shit. By the way, they also edited out a backstage segment where Goldilocks announced that Tio will be the one to face the Dupps, and it turned out Stan is afraid of little people. Was there anything missing or anything else from there?
No, that's essentially what happened. Like, he had this board with a cross on it that said, circled out cross with the little guys that said, no little people. Yeah. This match has all of the rules that we talked about that we kind of laughed at, but thought, hey, that kind of makes sense. This is it. This is where all of those rules come into play.
Now, I wrote this was Bo Dupp versus Tio, but in reality, it was both Dupps. Because even though Stan was mostly on commentary, Stan was occasionally participating and both getting and losing points for Bo.
Yep.
Now, I did rewrite down all the rules, but I'm not going to go through them. If you want to know all the rules, just listen last week. There's only one thing that they don't actually two things they don't actually do. And we'll get to those here over the last 2 weeks. But Tio starts the match by headbutting Jeremy Borash in the balls, and then he hits Bo with 2 foreign objects, so that gives him 4.5 points. Tio hit Bo in the balls with the stick horse, which Bo did not like, but somehow he didn't get points from that.
Because it was not, because it has to be slapping his ass with horsey poo. That is the rule.
But doesn't that, I guess he didn't get it from the fan, so it doesn't count as a foreign object.
No, it doesn't count.
All right. But then Stan begins crying like a pussy. So even though he's not actually in the match, it's technically Bo. Bo lost 5 points. So Bo's in the negative, but he does get 3 quick points off weapon shots to bring his score to -2. He got to -1, and he was at -1 for such a little amount of time. I didn't even get to make a reference to Brody Huber. I know this is kind of dumb, but I kind of chuckled at the spot where Stan gives a board to the fan, who then gives it back to Stan, so it counts as giving a foreign object from a fan to one of the wrestlers. Bo hit Tio with the board. Stan gooses Don West, so Dupps are finally at positive points. Stan tries to hit the ticket lady, but she beats him with a broom. And then we get the finish of the match. And it is not just the finish of the match, but the finish of the Dupp Cup, the finish of the Dupps, the end of this forever.
It's not the finish of the Dupps yet. It's not the end yet on this show.
Well, okay, but yeah. But Bo tries to put Tio's head in the shit-filled outhouse, but Puppet the Psycho Dwarf, who I thought we were never going to see again, at least until the Best Damn Sports Show period, Puppet the Psycho Dwarf was hiding in the outhouse, which again allegedly had shit in it for the last 5 years, and it was never cleaned out. So I hope Puppet got double pay that week. And he hits Bo. He shoves Bo's head into the porta potty, which somehow meant that even though I stopped keeping track of points, Tio has 10 points and gets the win. And Tio is the new holder of the Dupp Cup. And I wrote, this is not as fun as it was last week.
No, because what makes it fun is we're seeing somebody who genuinely had a cause to go for the cup, but we also wanted to see them get their ass beat, and that was Ed Ferrara, because it's been well documented over the course of TNA. He's a horn dog and wants sex, even though he is married. Like, how many times when Francine was there, he tried to grow Francine's boobs, or actually did. So seeing Ed Ferrara get his ass beat in the guise of trying to score, a la Beavis and Butthead, it was cathartic. It was fun.
I think it's safe to assume that Ed Ferrara's wife has never and will never watch this shit.
I am under the assumption that she is not a wrestling fan.
Yes. And
but we have Tio, who, let's just say, is a little more legitimate than Ed Ferrara. Or strike that, a lot more legitimate than Ed Ferrara. And it just wasn't fun. It's like, this didn't make sense. Like, Ed made sense. But this didn't make sense.
Not at all. And I should note that how cursed the Dupp Cup is. This was a winner leaves town match, a loser leaves town match, a loser's partner leaves town match, and a loser of the first week's match leaves town match.
Oh,
Because, like, unless I'm mistaken, Ferrara's gone after this show. Tio and Puppet don't come back until the Best Damn Sports Show period. And this is it for the Dupps. They're in a segment later where, hey, technically they wrote them off, even though I'm sure that wasn't the plan at the time. But yeah, everyone involved in the Dupp Cup who's not named Don West is officially done with the company.
yep. I'd like to assume, like, we could probably check on Cage Match. But I think, because they originally had, in 2000, they had a developmental deal with WWE. They worked in Heartland.
Yes.
I think around this time, the future Trevor Murdoch had another developmental deal coming.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
he went back, worked Deep South and OVW, mainly Deep South, because that's where Lance Cade was. And was there, refined his craft, and would come up with Lance Cade. We have Lance Cade and Trevor Murdoch, who'd be a good tag team for a couple of years.
And he would go on to become the NWA World Heavyweight Champion. By the way, like, just looking through Cage Match, and of course there's always things that could be missing. He stopped being, bowed up or stand up. He stopped being stand up for a while because he's Trevor Rhodes in WLW, which I think was Harley Race's promotion. He's about to go to Noah, where he's teaming with, among other people, Vader and Too Cold Scorpio. So it's like he wasn't a Dupp anymore, except here in this little run in TNA. Now, in the interest of fairness, I cannot prove that neither the Dupps nor any of the little people appear next week in a backstage segment or something, but we will never see them wrestle again, is what I'm saying.
I can confirm they're not.
All right. Great. And yeah. By the way, 0 out of 10. 2 matches in a row.
I got a better score.
Which would be?
2 out of 10. It gets the deuce. It dropped a deuce on us.
Wow.
Wow. Thank you. Promo package next for Elix Skipper and Monty Brown, which I have a theory.
I have a theory that it's a demon. That's a demon. Now something isn't right there.
My working theory with TNA right now is that a lot of the storylines are getting wrapped up because they don't know if they're going to be around post-September.
Mm-hmm.
So, because I think even Jerry Jarrett said that the cash isn't coming in, even with the live gate, it's not coming in.
Pretty much.
So we get this segment, which is the blow-off between Elix Skipper and Monty Brown. Here's where I agree with a lot of pundits of too much is a bad thing. This is the third hardcore match in a row. It is the best hardcore match out of the 3 of the show, but that's not saying much.
I was gonna say it's a low bar.
Right. It's not saying much because it's still 3 hardcore matches in a row. I mean, sure, the stigma with ECW is like every match was like chairs and barbed wire baseball bats and stuff like that. That's kind of true, but not really. Because there's a lot of matches in between that don't really get talked about where a lot of the matches had actual wrestling in it. Like, for every Sandman or Balls Mahoney match, you had matches with the FBI, you had Whipwreck and Tajiri at the end, Danny during Amish Roadkill. The tag team division wasn't really much of a hardcore style. They might have used a weapon or two in the match, but it wasn't the end-all be-all.
Where like you had Shane Douglas and Taz as world champion for, well over like 2 consecutive years, and except for like there's a Taz Tajiri match that was just nuts, but like other than that, like it was all pretty much straight wrestling for better or worse.
Yeah. So my notes are a little like, okay, saw this in the Nazi Malice match. Kind of saw this in the Dupp Cup. Oh, definitely saw this in the Nazi Malice match. It showed off what Monty could do, and Skipper bumped like a boss for Monty Brown. It was a good, solid match, but I would have loved to see something in the middle. Like, as much as I hate to say it, you know that Bruce Tina Hamilton match?
I'm aware of it.
If they had put that match between the Dupps and this, I would be fine, and this match would be better received. Because 3 hardcore matches is too much. Especially 3 hardcore matches in a row.
Definitely. And it's like, even only seeing 2 on my end, I really didn't have a lot to say about this, which was a Detroit street fight here in Nashville. Brown hung Elix over the top rope with his shirt 40 seconds in, which is apparently what you do in Detroit. Elix picked up a stop sign, and instead of hitting Monty with it, he just threw it in the ring. Monty throws a trash can lid to Elix, and so Elix used it on Brown. Fast forward some very long minutes, and Brown won by hitting an alpha bomb to Skipper on a trash can. And it always looks impressive when he does it, but again, it's one of those things where it's like, that's one of those moves you can't do to everybody. You know what I mean?
No, and that's why he came up with the pounce later.
Yeah. By the way, you know who I was just thinking about that I'm like, man, when is he on the show again? Apollo. And I'm like, and I went and looked, Apollo's gone until 2004. I thought he was pretty consistent throughout these early days, but nope, he is gone until January 21st, 2004.
Isn't he back in Puerto Rico wrestling for WWC?
I'm assuming so. I just kept it to the TNA matches, but let me see here. I'm sure that's where he is. And that might be, well, I'd say that's where Abyss is, but I mean, Abyss, whatchamacallit, was only in for 1 show. He's actually in the IWA. But yes, that's where he is right now.
He's in Puerto Rico.
Yes. He just teamed with Ricky Banderas to defeat Abyss and Tojo Sensei. Okay. Sounds like a hell of a match. I have no idea who Tojo Sensei is.
Wasn't Ricky Banderas Judas Macias?
Yes. Indeed he was. Along with he was also the last Wrestling Society ex-champion. Easy for me to say. Oh, and he also teams with Glamour Boy Shane, who's future TNA referee / wrestler Shane Sewell.
I think he's in V1's boy stable. Either him or OOC's boy stable.
No idea.
Okay.
By the way, note that this match was at least better than the last few matches. Not that that's saying much, and I gave it a 2.
Gave it a 5. It was average.
Goldilocks was with the Flying Elvis Impersonators, and tonight they are in a 4-way elimination match with Low Key for the X Division title. And I don't know what to say about this promo. I don't know what to think about this promo, because the promo really wasn't that great, but Sonny Siaki basically turning on his partners and the whole gimmick, for lack of a better thing, it's like was kind of ridiculous here because since day one they've been the flying Elvis impersonators, and Siaki's promo is basically about how much Elvis sucked.
Makes sense. By the way, because it was such a hit last week, I brought it back.
Oh God, are you singing again?
No, the Sonny Siaki count.
Ah, okay. How many times
In
did
this
Sonny Siaki say Sonny Siaki?
Sonny Siaki said Sonny Siaki in a Sonny Siaki promo 7 Sonny Siaki times.
Nice. He did say that he was the bloodline, and I gotta say, like, I know they're throwing in a lot of people here on SmackDown, sometimes at random. I must have missed Sonny Siaki.
His tail has a bloodline connection. His wrestling tail does have a connection.
More so than just he kind of looks like The Rock.
Yeah.
Okay.
He actually teamed with a member of the Samoan bloodline.
And who would that be?
Probably the worst one. Manu.
I was gonna say Rosie. Manu.
Yep.
Good old Alpha Junior.
Yep. Teamed up with Manu in OVW or Florida. Was like the Samoan hit crew, like supposed to be a new version of the Samoan SWAT team. But Manu got called up as part of the Legacy stable. Sonny left wrestling because he donated a kidney to his brother.
That was nice of him.
Mm-hmm.
Low Key versus the Flying Elvis impersonators in a 4-way elimination match for the X Division title. It took until the match had actually started for Tenay to explain the match, because at first they made it sound like it was a 3-on-1 handicap match with the title on the line. But nope, it is technically a 4-way match. With that said, I mean, Low Key was basically, I mean, there was a very brief amount of time where he wasn't, but Low Key was pretty much in the match the entire time. And I mean, it's always fun to watch Low Key kick people, and he was kicking people left and right here.
That's what we expect from Low Key. He had the educated feet. So, and plus, there was actual commentary about this. He uses his feet because there's longer reach with his legs.
Mm-hmm.
And it hits a lot harder.
Indeed.
And I guess Low Key trained up his legs so much that he doesn't get the backlash.
So we did get a little bit of Elvis versus Elvis as Yang and Estrada worked on each other. Estrada hits a tornado DDT, but Yang taps him out with a Boston Crab. And I gotta say, it's like Jimmy Yang, it's like he doesn't last long in the company, but like he was really good here, I thought.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's too bad that it's like he leaves and then I don't think he ever comes back. I mean, he does like a one-off, you know, years later, but I think this is pretty much it for Jimmy Yang and TNA.
I've skipped a few weeks and bounced around a bit because I wanted to research Bruce for future reference. Jimmy Yang is still around for a while.
Mm-hmm.
He officially leaves like February or March.
Interesting.
Because he becomes
Akio.
Akio and teams up with, I want to say, Tajiri.
Yes. It was Akio and Sakota? Question mark?
Akira and Sakota.
Yeah. And then he leaves and comes back as Jimmy Wang Yang.
And he had that gimmick for years. And it's a believable gimmick for Jimmy because he's actually an American. He was born in Georgia or something. He is a legitimate redneck. I think he came up with that gimmick. And Vince was like, I like it.
God damn, pal. Why didn't you come up with this years ago? So anyway, he had low key down. He went for Yang time, or he was going for Yang time. But Siaki was like the laziest trip you've ever seen. He tapped Yang's foot and Yang went down. And Key eliminated him with a key crusher. But, Yang got tired of being fucked around by Siaki. As Siaki came off the ropes for a what a maneuver. But Yang kicked him in the back of the head, which was missed by the camera. And Key won with a roll-up. I thought this was a fun match. I gave it a 5.
I gave it a 7.
Any other thoughts on low-key kicking people?
You can't get enough of low-key kicking people. Sure, a decade later, he would become unreliable. But I enjoyed it.
Yes.
He
when he showed up on the Tokyo Dome show for his 3-way junior heavyweight title match in a suit and tie, and I mean it was an homage to the Hitman video game, but he didn't run it by anybody in New Japan before doing it, so it just looked like he was making a mockery out of the match, and he lost his job.
Mm-hmm.
Ain't it fun how that happens? Earlier today, Goldilocks jumped in the car with Jerry Lynn to go to the White Trash Cafe, where AJ Styles was offering his penis to a waitress when Jerry Lynn showed up and kicked his ass. By the way, also in Jerry Jarrett's book, he says that they've done a horrible job of differentiating who are baby faces and who are heels. You don't say.
Yeah.
And any thoughts on this, including AJ offering his cock as a tip?
No.
Okay.
Because I have something more interesting. We need to talk about this.
We need to talk about Shark Boy without his mask on.
Well, let's set this up. We got Disco's Jive talking up next. He says Pauline is not there this week. I guess Pauline asked for too much money, more than $500 probably.
Or her boyfriend wasn't on the roster to chip in the other $150.
Right. And Disco goes, we got a genuine celebrity. Out comes Dean Baldwin. Now, as alluded to by Arya, Dean Baldwin is Shark Boy's unmasked gimmick. And I did research.
Of course you did.
He is Shark Boy's douchebag Hollywood Nepo baby gimmick. He has been doing this for a little while around this time. And I gotta be honest, it kind of works.
I legit didn't even know this was a thing.
This was a total thing. He brought it back in 2014 in a match against Goldust. Because I think Goldust, he needed somebody to work, because I guess the company needed somebody to work heel against Goldust. All of the heels that they had were booked already in other matches. Don't want to throw Goldust against an unknown because that's too easy. So Shark Boy was there, broke out the Dean Baldwin gimmick, and had this big Hollywood entrance with women of the evening and stuff like that, with a cigarette and blue martini. In this era, it was a cigarette and a regular martini. In a martini glass, you'd probably find at Dollar Tree. Oh, I'm sorry, it's the South. Probably find a Family Dollar. Or Dollar General.
They don't have Dollar Tree in the South?
I think around the time it was Family Dollar. They had Family Dollars because Dollar Tree didn't buy out Family Dollar yet.
I feel special. We have all three up here.
Yeah. So there was a couple of moments of talking about the Baldwins, and it was fine for what it was. I mean, I've seen stuff like this before. It wasn't bad. It was inoffensive. Brian Lawler comes out and ruins everything, saying he knows what Jeff Jarrett did. Well, what did he do? Dean says that he wants an autograph. So Lawler decks him and breaks the set.
Lawler may have said shit more than Sonny Siaki said Sonny Siaki.
That's bad. Anyway, security and unfrozen caveman frozen Nazi hairs throw him out of the building.
And it's funny because, it's not even like it's Ron Harris. No, it is the same Harris repeatedly. We apparently only have the budget for one Harris, and someone determined that it should be Don.
I think Ron is injured.
So injured he can't come out and point at the back for Brian Lawler to go to?
Let me look this up. You could talk about... We'll talk about the main event in a bit. However, there is a Goldie interview with the Dupps.
Yes.
Bo quits the TNA, quits the NWA, and Stan is not seen again. We gotta get the Dupp Cup back. They scare me when he mentions when they saw Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. It was Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. That was the title of the 71 movie. And so
Indeed.
He was creeped out.
Yes, he was under the assumption that he was going to wrestle an Oompa Loompa, I guess. But yet, he is never coming back, and which is technically a lie. He does come back to TNA. Trevor Murdoch does for a brief run in 2009. But that's about it.
That run is awful.
The 2009 run? I didn't really think that was a run. Yeah. So the Dupps are gone. Like I said, there is a lot of cost cutting, and next week is it's a pivotal week in the history of TNA. Next week, we'll get to that in 1 week's time. But the company is dead for all intents and purposes. But actually noted in Jerry Jarrett's book is that they met with Dixie Carter, who said how much it would cost to advertise every week with her. And that's the start of it. But so then we get our main event. It is NWA World Tag Team Champions AJ Styles and Jerry Lynn versus Ron Killings and Jeff Jarrett. And it is sad that, it's not sad this was the best match on the show because, with the talent involved, you wouldn't be shocked to hear that. But, it's just sad, And this was done as an excuse to get the belts off of AJ and Lynn without actually doing a title change. Because, hey, I'll go right to the end here. They do a finish here where the referee gets knocked out. Jerry Lynn gives Truth a cradle pile driver. Jeff Jarrett gives Jerry Lynn a stroke. AJ gives Truth a spiral tap. A second referee runs in, and him and Scott Armstrong, and I'll say this, they timed this one perfectly. They did the double pinfall finish. Now, so the match is a draw, and so in theory, champions retain on a draw, right? Nope. Bullet Bob Armstrong just walked out and said that due to the double pin, the tag team titles were now vacated until further notice. Great. Great.
This is going to be a recurring thing with the tag belts. Don't worry.
Oh, I won't. There's one that's a lot more egregious than this coming up in a few months.
Oh yeah. So here's the situation. Afterwards, Bullet Bob Armstrong decides, you know what? Enough of this bull crap. I'm setting stuff straight. Hey, Lynn, Styles, you want to go each other's throats? Fine. We'll have a match next week. Jerry Lynn goes, I want Falls Count anywhere. AJ Styles went, I want no DQ. All right. Bully Bob's like, fine. Best 2 out of 3 falls match. Best 2 out of 3 wins. First match, Falls Count anywhere. Second match, no DQ. If we need for a third, 10-minute Iron Man. Have fun.
10-minute Iron Man match.
2-hour show.
I know. But
and
like,
we'll talk about this when we get to next week.
oh yeah. And also, Ron Killings is going to defend the NWA World Heavyweight title. Now you might think to yourself, okay, Jarrett, Jarrett should be getting it. Technically, Jarrett pinned Jerry Lynn this week. So Jarrett should be getting the title shot, right? No. Well, look, AJ Styles pinned R-Truth. It was ignored in the double pin finish, but AJ Styles pinned the World Heavyweight Champion. And I know we just said AJ's going to wrestle Jerry Lynn, but maybe they'll do some angle here and AJ's going to get a world title shot next week on this show. No. Ron the Truth Killings will defend the World Heavyweight title against the alpha male Monty Brown next week.
It makes sense.
It does, but it also goes with Jeff Jarrett's idea that he's being discriminated against. Because why is he not being passed over for Monty Brown? It's like they're going out of their way to, give everybody not named Jeff Jarrett a world title match.
True.
That's But yeah. And Don West shills next week's matches. We're going to have Low Key versus Amazing Red and the Maximos in a 4-way elimination match because why not, I guess. And because we don't have enough 2 out of 3 falls matches, Sonny Siaki is going to wrestle Jimmy Yang. And then even though he was taken out of the building, as we've seen, being thrown out of the building really doesn't do much. Brian Lawler runs back in and threatens to kill Jeff Jarrett as the show goes off the air.
You're forgetting something about that, though.
Brian Lawler threatening to murder Jeff Jarrett? What am I forgetting?
Before Don West started to shill next week's show, Jarrett was like, all right, I've had enough of this. So he takes the tag titles.
Oh, yeah.
And proceeds to bail. So when Jarrett has both belts in his hand, and Bob Armstrong and one of the Nazis go after him, he starts to leave. Brian Lawler jumps him. He drops both belts. And he chokes Jarrett to end the show. I know what you did. What did he do? Find out next week. Will he?
No.
Probably not, but whatever. Also, as noted by Arya a few moments ago, this is the end of Ed Ferrara in TNA. He is done.
D-U-N-N done.
Well done.
Just without Timothy Well and Stephen Dunn.
Yeah. He doesn't do anything pro wrestling related anymore. He does some he did that Insiders DVD probably did a few interviews, but never booked anything else.
No, he does. He and it's one of the reasons why TNA fired Cornette in 2009, because after they fired all of Jeff Jarrett's guys, Russo went to Dixie and was like, "Hey, I need help writing this show." And so they brought in Ed Ferrara, but Ed Ferrara wouldn't come in with Cornette still there because they had their past. And so Ferrara was there for like 6 months in 2009, 2010, because he left right after Hogan came in. But yeah, he has a brief little comeback, but that's about it.
Yeah.
By the way, I gave that tag team title match a 7.5 out of 10.
The finish kind of killed it for me. I gave it a 6.
Yeah. It's like, honestly, the finish killed it. I would have given it higher than that. But yeah, so overall, match quality averaged out a 3.25. Overall enjoyment, 2.5 out of 10. There was so much crap in the middle of this show, like almost a full hour of crap. How is Jerry Jarrett not realize what is working and just concentrate on the shit that gets over? Like,
because he has to placate his kids' buddies. That's what he has to do. So,
like, Disco wasn't even Jeff Jarrett's buddy. Disco's Russo's buddy. And I mean, Disco's not even really the problem. Like, I can't even like blame, Disco for most of this shit here this week. Like, and it's like he was far from the worst shit on the show.
Honestly, he had one of the better segments this week.
Which, it's like, yeah. And again, while not saying much, again, Disco Inferno was not the most embarrassing thing on this show week after week. However, I will say that knowing that we're going to have no more Dupps and knowing we're going to get 3 AJ Styles, Jerry Lynn matches next week, the future build does have me more excited, than usual. I gave it a 5.5 for future build. And
the build is strong.
Yes.
Be fast forward to next week. If for those viewers and listeners who remember a few weeks ago, I brought up the notion that they would soon go to 1 week is live, 1 week is taped. That's this coming week. Because next week, the first 2 hours are live, and then next week is taped. Because they wanted to get those last 2 shows in for the budget to be even lower.
That's what I was trying to, hint at here. But yeah, it's all the issues with the money, it becomes tenfold next week. And we'll get to that here, I guess. But yeah, that is gonna do it here for this week's program. Overall rating, by the way, a 3.75, so not the worst we've seen, but far from the best.
Gave it a 4.
Yeah. But yeah, before we go, do you have anything else you want to say? Anything you want to plug for the fine listening public?
Yeah. When you're on a road trip, make sure to do the following things. 1, have a fresh stick of deodorant. It is vital because you're going to be in a car for hours on end and you want to be smelling good. 2, bathroom breaks are essential. So if you got to stop for gas or you got to stop and get food, make sure they have a bathroom open to customers. Do that. And 3, if you get the opportunity to do something like that, to just do something crazy that it's within reason, you should do it.
Are you trying to tell us about something that recently happened to you during your trip?
Let's just say that insert weird thing here.
Oh my God, I can't believe insert weird thing here happened.
Yeah, shocked me.
Man, how on earth are you managing to be here after insert weird thing here?
I have a good lawyer.
I always say the best thing to have is a good lawyer. But anyway, that's going to do it for this week's program. I want to thank everybody for listening. Hope you all enjoyed it. Hopefully, we didn't run you all off, and we will talk to you again in 7 days.